I walked into my own baby shower to find my sister sitting in the chair of honor, opening my gifts while telling everyone that my baby deserved a better mother. The pink and gold balloons I had helped blow up that morning suddenly felt like they were mocking me. 23 guests sat in a perfect circle around her, nodding along as she held up tiny onesies and blankets meant for my daughter, critiquing each one like she was some kind of expert. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Carolina Reeves, and 6 months ago, I thought I knew what betrayal looked like. I was wrong. Real betrayal doesn't announce itself with dramatic music and tears. It wears a pastel pink dress and sits in your living room, opening gifts bought for your unborn child, while explaining to your closest friends and family why you're unfit to be a mother. The morning had started perfectly. I woke up at 7, my 34-week belly making it impossible to sleep past dawn anymore. Marcus, my husband of 3 years, was already in the kitchen making decaf coffee and whole wheat toast, the way he'd done every morning since we found out about the pregnancy. He kissed my forehead and reminded me that today was going to be special. My sister Elena had volunteered to organize the entire shower. She'd insisted, actually, practically begging me to let her handle every detail. At the time, I thought it was sweet. Elena had always been the party planner in our family, the one who remembered birthdays and arranged surprise gatherings. She was single, 31, and had recently gone through a difficult breakup with her longtime boyfriend, Derek. I figured throwing herself into planning my baby shower was her way of channeling her energy into something positive. She'd spent weeks coordinating with our mother, our cousins, my college friends, and Marcus's sister. The guest list grew to 25 people, all women who meant something to me. Elena handled the invitations, the decorations, the catering, even the games. All I had to do was show up and be grateful. That should have been my first warning sign. Elena had never done anything without expecting something in return. I spent the morning getting ready, choosing a flowing lavender dress that accommodated my growing belly while still making me feel beautiful. Marcus helped me with my jewelry, fastening the pearl necklace his grandmother had given me when we got engaged. We'd decided to keep the baby's gender a surprise until birth, but I had a feeling she was a girl. Something about the way she moved, the gentle flutters that felt more like dancing than kicking. The shower was set to start at 2 in the afternoon at my mother's house. Mom had the biggest living room, and Elena had transformed it into a pastel paradise. When I arrived at 1:30 to help with final preparations, everything looked magazine perfect. Pink and gold streamers hung from the ceiling, matching balloons clustered in corners, and a beautiful cake shaped like a baby carriage sat on the dining room table. Elena greeted me at the door wearing a stunning pink midi dress that hugged her figure perfectly. She'd clearly gotten her hair and makeup professionally done. For a moment, I felt underdressed in my comfortable maternity wear, but I pushed the feeling aside. This was my day, my celebration. "Everything looks incredible," I told her, hugging her carefully around my belly. "I can't believe you did all this." She smiled, but something flickered in her eyes. Well, someone had to make sure it was done right. The comment stung a little, but I chose to interpret it charitably. Elena was a perfectionist, and she'd put a lot of work into this event. Maybe she was just nervous about everything going smoothly. Guests began arriving at 2. My college roommate Sarah came first, squealing with excitement and immediately wanting to feel the baby kick. My cousin Jennifer followed, along with her teenage daughter, who'd offered to help serve refreshments. Marcus's sister brought her 6-month-old son, and I spent several minutes cooing over him, imagining myself with my own baby in just a few weeks. By 2:30, almost everyone had arrived. Mom was in the kitchen with Elena, arranging finger sandwiches and fruit salad on serving platters. I was in the living room, settling into what I assumed was my designated chair, a comfortable armchair that Elena had decorated with a mommy-to-be sash. That's when Elena appeared in the doorway, her expression sharp. "Actually, Carolina, would you mind sitting over there?" She gestured toward a folding chair that had been set up against the wall. "I need to sit here to manage the gift opening." I blinked, confused. Manage the gift opening? You know how you get overwhelmed in groups, she said, her voice taking on a patronizing tone that made several guests look up. I thought it would be easier if I handled the coordination. That way you can just relax and enjoy. Sarah frowned, but Carolina should open her own gifts, shouldn't she? Elena smiled titanly. Trust me, this will work better for everyone. I felt heat rising in my cheeks, but I didn't want to cause a scene. These women had taken time out of their Saturday to celebrate with me. The last thing I wanted was to turn my baby shower into a family drama. So I smiled and moved to the folding chair, telling myself that Elena probably had some kind of system planned. Mom came out of the kitchen carrying a tray of beverages, her face beaming with grandmotherly excitement. Are we ready to start the festivities? Elena clapped her hands together. Absolutely. Everyone, please take your seats. We're going to do things a little differently today. I watched from my uncomfortable folding chair as Elena positioned herself in the decorated armchair, smoothing her dress and adjusting the mommy-to-be sash around her own waist. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. What's she doing? Marcus's sister whispered to me. I shook my head, not trusting my voice. Elena picked up the first gift, a beautifully wrapped box with silver ribbon. This one's from Sarah, she announced, reading the tag. Let's see what we have here. She tore open the wrapping paper with theatrical flair, revealing a set of organic cotton onesies in neutral colors. Instead of showing them to me first, Elena held them up for the room to see. These are lovely, she said, examining each piece. Though I do worry about the practicality. Organic cotton is so expensive to maintain. And let's be honest, babies go through so many outfit changes. Carolina has always been more of a bargain shopper, so I'm not sure she'll know how to properly care for these. The room fell uncomfortably quiet. Sarah's face had gone pale. I included care instructions in the box, Sarah said quietly. Elena waved dismissively. Oh, I'm sure you did. It's just that Carolina tends to throw everything in the same wash load. Remember when she ruined Mom's cashmere sweater in college? I felt my hands clench into fists. That was 15 years ago, Elena. Habits die hard, she said, with a laugh that no one else joined.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
She moved on to the next gift, this one from my cousin Jennifer. It was a beautiful mobile for the baby's crib, with soft felt animals in muted pastels. Elena examined it like she was appraising jewelry. This is cute, she said, but I wonder if Carolina has thought about safety standards. She's never been very detail-oriented, and there are so many small parts that could come loose. The baby deserves better than something that might pose a choking hazard. Jennifer's mouth fell open. It's from a high-end baby boutique. It meets all safety standards. I'm sure it does, Elena replied smoothly. But you never know how these things will hold up over time, especially with Carolina's tendency to neglect maintenance. I started to stand up, but Elena's voice cut through my movement. Please, Carolina, let me finish. Everyone brought such beautiful gifts, and I want to make sure they're properly appreciated. The third gift was a baby carrier from Marcus's sister. Elena strapped it on over her dress, modeling it for the room. This is actually really nice, she said, adjusting the straps. I've been reading about attachment parenting, and skin-to-skin contact is so important for infant development, though I do worry that Carolina won't use it properly. She's never been comfortable with physical affection, even as a child. Remember, Mom, how she used to squirm away from hugs? My mother's face had gone very still. Elena, dear, maybe Carolina should— It's fine, Mom, Elena interrupted. I'm just trying to be helpful. We all want what's best for the baby. She continued through gift after gift, each one becoming an opportunity to critique my character, my preparedness, my worthiness as a mother. The room grew tenser with each unwrapping. Some guests started checking their phones, clearly uncomfortable. Others exchanged worried glances. When Elena opened the stroller from my mother, she actually stood up and began pushing it around the room. This is exactly what the baby needs, she said. A smooth ride, proper support, quality construction. It's such a shame that Carolina has never been good with mechanical things. Remember when she couldn't figure out how to adjust her car seat? I ended up having to drive her everywhere for 2 weeks. That was when I was 19 and had never owned a car before, I said through gritted teeth. The point is, Elena continued, some people are naturally maternal, and others, well, others need more guidance. That's when she said it, the words that would replay in my head for weeks afterward. Honestly, looking at all these beautiful gifts, all the love and care that went into choosing them, I just keep thinking that this baby deserves a better mother. The room went dead silent. Even the baby in Marcus's sister's arms stopped fussing. Elena held up a tiny pair of pink booties, examining them in the light streaming through Mom's living room window. Don't get me wrong, I love Carolina. She's my sister. But love doesn't automatically make someone qualified to raise a child. This little one deserves someone who pays attention to details, someone who thinks ahead, someone who doesn't fall apart under pressure. My cousin Jennifer stood up abruptly. I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding here. No misunderstanding, Elena said calmly, just honesty. Carolina has always been the type to jump into things without thinking them through. Her marriage to Marcus, this pregnancy, even this baby shower. She didn't plan any of it properly. I had to step in and organize everything because she was too overwhelmed to handle it herself. That wasn't true. I had wanted to plan my own shower, but Elena had insisted she could do better. She'd made it sound like a gift, a generous gesture from a loving sister. Sarah found her voice. These gifts are for Carolina and her baby. She should be opening them. Elena laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Should she? Look at her. Does she look like someone who's ready for the responsibility of a newborn? She can barely manage her own life. I felt tears starting to form, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of everyone. Elena, that's enough, my mother said, her voice shaky but firm. Is it enough, Mom? Elena turned to face our mother directly. Or are we all just going to pretend that Carolina is ready for this? She's 32 years old and has never successfully kept a houseplant alive. She forgets to return phone calls, she's constantly running late, and she still asks you to help her with basic adult tasks. Now she's going to be responsible for a helpless infant? Marcus's sister bounced her baby nervously. Maybe we should reschedule this for another time. Why? Elena asked. So we can all gather again and pretend that we're not worried about what's going to happen to this child? I'm the only one brave enough to say what everyone's thinking. She gestured around the room with the baby booty still in her hand. Look at these gifts. Look at how much money and thought people put into supporting Carolina through this. And for what? So she can fail at the most important job in the world? I couldn't stay quiet anymore. What is wrong with you? Elena turned to me with an expression of exaggerated patience. There's nothing wrong with me, Carolina. I'm trying to look out for everyone here, including you. This baby is going to need a stable, attentive, capable mother. If you can't provide that, maybe it's time to consider other options. Other options? The words came out as a whisper.
There are wonderful families out there who are desperate for children. Families who would cherish this baby and give her everything she needs. Families who are actually prepared for parenthood. The suggestion hit me like a physical blow. She was talking about adoption. At my own baby shower, in front of my family and friends, my sister was suggesting that I give up my unborn child. My mother stood up so quickly that her chair nearly fell over. Elena Marie Patterson, that is enough. Get out of my house. Elena blinked, apparently surprised by the reaction. Mom, I'm just being realistic. Someone has to think about what's best for the baby. Get out, Mom repeated, her voice stronger now. Right now. And take that sash off. You have no right to wear it. For the first time since she'd started her performance, Elena looked uncertain. She glanced around the room, perhaps expecting support from some of the other guests. Instead, she found 22 women staring at her with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. Sarah was the first to speak. I've known Carolina for 12 years, and she's one of the most caring, responsible people I've ever met. What you're doing is cruel and completely unacceptable. My cousin Jennifer nodded vigorously. Carolina is going to be an amazing mother. Anyone can see that. Elena's confident facade began to crack. You don't know her like I do. You don't see how she really is. How she really is? Marcus's sister had stood up, her baby still in her arms. You mean kind? Thoughtful? The type of person who always asks about your family and remembers your birthday? The type of person who organized a meal train when my husband had surgery last year? Elena's face flushed. That's different. Taking care of a baby is something she's going to excel at, my mother interrupted, just like she's excelled at everything else she's put her mind to. Her career, her marriage, her friendships. The only person in this room showing poor judgment right now is you. Elena looked around desperately, as if searching for an ally. When she found none, her expression hardened. Fine, she said, beginning to remove the mommy-to-be sash with jerky, angry movements. Ignore me. Pretend everything is perfect. But when reality hits and Carolina realizes she's in over her head, don't come crying to me. She dropped the sash on the floor and headed toward the door, her heels clicking sharply against Mom's hardwood floors. At the threshold, she turned back. Carolina, when you inevitably mess this up, remember that I was the only one who loved you enough to tell you the truth. Then she was gone, leaving behind a room full of torn wrapping paper, scattered gifts, and the heavy silence of collective shock. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Sarah quietly got up and began gathering the opened gifts, placing them gently in my lap. "These are yours," she said softly. "Every single one of them was chosen with love for you and your baby." One by one, the other guests followed suit. They brought me the gifts Elena had opened, the cards she hadn't read, the love she had tried to taint with her poison. They hugged me, reassured me, and slowly began to restore what my sister had tried to destroy. But even as I thanked them, even as I tried to salvage some joy from what remained of my baby shower, I couldn't shake Elena's words. They echoed in my mind like a cruel song, questioning everything I thought I knew about myself and my readiness to become a mother. That night, after the last guest had left and Marcus and I had loaded all the gifts into our car, I sat in Mom's kitchen while she made tea. "She's been planning this," Mom said suddenly, her hands shaking slightly as she poured hot water over tea bags. "This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment cruelty. She's been planning to humiliate you." I looked up from my untouched cup. "What do you mean?" Mom sat down across from me, her face pale and drawn. The things she said, the specific examples she used, the car seat incident from when you were 19, the cashmere sweater from college, even knowing about your houseplant struggles. She's been collecting ammunition. The realization hit me like cold water. Why would she do that? Mom was quiet for a long time, staring into her tea. "I think she's jealous, sweetheart. Elena has always been the star, the one everyone paid attention to. Beautiful, charming, successful in her career. But you have something she's always wanted and never been able to achieve." "What's that?" "A loving marriage, a stable relationship, and now a baby." I felt tears finally start to fall. But she could have all those things. She's amazing, she's accomplished, she's also 31 years old and just lost the man she thought she was going to marry. Derek broke up with her 3 months ago, Carolina. He told her he didn't want to have children with her. The pieces began to click into place. Elena's eagerness to plan the shower, her recent interest in baby-related topics, her sudden expertise on child development and safety standards. "She wanted this," I whispered. Mom nodded sadly. "She wanted this life, this attention, this celebration. And when she couldn't have it, she decided to destroy it for you." I spent that night lying awake, replaying every moment of the shower, analyzing every cruel word Elena had spoken. Marcus held me as I cried, reassuring me over and over that Elena was wrong, that I would be a wonderful mother, that her jealousy had nothing to do with my worth or capabilities. But doubt is insidious. It creeps into the quiet moments, the spaces between thoughts, the vulnerable minutes right before sleep. Elena knew me better than anyone except Marcus. She knew my insecurities, my past mistakes, my moments of uncertainty.
and she had weaponized all of it against me.
The next morning, I woke up determined to put the entire incident behind me. I had a baby coming in 6 weeks. I had preparations to make, a nursery to finish, and a life to focus on that didn't include my sister's toxic presence. But Elena wasn't done with me yet. Around 10 in the morning, my phone started buzzing with notifications, text messages, missed calls, social media alerts. At first, I ignored them, assuming they were friends calling to check on me after yesterday's debacle. Then Sarah called, her voice tight with anger. "Carolina, you need to see what Elena posted on Facebook." My blood went cold. What did she post? "Just look at it, but prepare yourself. It's bad." I opened Facebook with trembling fingers and navigated to Elena's profile. What I found there made my stomach drop to the floor. She had posted a long, detailed status update titled, "When Love Means Saying Hard Truths." In it, she painted herself as the concerned sister who had tried to stage an intervention at my baby shower, only to be attacked and rejected by a family in denial about my unfitness for motherhood. She detailed every criticism she'd made the day before, but framed them as loving observations made out of concern for my unborn child's welfare. She described me as mentally unstable, financially irresponsible, and emotionally immature. She suggested that my family was enabling my delusions about being ready for parenthood. But the worst part was the ending. Elena had written that she feared for my baby's safety and was considering reporting her concerns to the appropriate authorities. She positioned herself as the only person brave enough to speak up for a child who couldn't speak for herself. The post had been up for 3 hours and already had dozens of comments. Most were from Elena's friends and coworkers who didn't know me well, expressing shock and concern. A few were from mutual acquaintances asking for more details or offering their support to Elena during this difficult time. "Carolina?" Sarah's voice on the phone sounded far away. "Are you still there?" "She's trying to destroy my life," I managed to whisper. "We're not going to let that happen," Sarah said fiercely. "I'm already typing a response, and so are several other people who were at the shower yesterday. Everyone saw what really happened." But I barely heard her. I was reading the comments on Elena's post, watching strangers discuss my fitness as a mother based on my sister's lies. I was watching my reputation, my character, and my confidence crumble in real time. That's when I realized that yesterday's baby shower wasn't the end of Elena's attack. It was just the beginning. And if I wanted to protect my family, I was going to have to fight back. Marcus found me on the bathroom floor 20 minutes later, hyperventilating over my phone. The Facebook post was still open on the screen, and I was scrolling through comment after comment of strangers discussing whether I should be allowed to keep my baby. My husband took one look at the post, and his face went white with rage. "We're calling a lawyer," he said, his voice deadly calm. "Right now." "What can a lawyer do about a Facebook post?" I asked through my tears. "Defamation, harassment, false reporting to authorities." Marcus was already scrolling through his contacts. "This isn't just sibling drama anymore, Carolina. She's actively trying to interfere with our family." While Marcus made phone calls, I forced myself to read every single comment on Elena's post. I needed to understand the full scope of what she'd done. Most of the responses came from people who didn't know me at all, Elena's work colleagues and casual acquaintances who only saw her polished public persona. They praised her for being brave enough to speak difficult truths and encouraged her to follow through on her threats to contact social services. But scattered among the supportive comments were responses from people who knew both of us. My college friend Rachel had written a lengthy rebuttal detailing my volunteer work with children and my reputation as one of the most responsible people she knew. Marcus's cousin had shared stories about how I'd helped care for his elderly parents during their health scares. Even some of Elena's own friends were starting to question her narrative. The most damaging comments, though, came from people I barely knew, but who felt qualified to weigh in on my fitness as a mother based on Elena's carefully crafted lies. A woman named Patricia, who worked with Elena, had written 3 paragraphs about the importance of protecting children from unprepared parents. Another commenter suggested that I should consider placing my baby with a more suitable family immediately after birth. Reading those words felt like being stabbed repeatedly. These strangers were discussing my unborn daughter like she was already in danger, like I was already failing her before she'd even taken her first breath. Elena had successfully planted seeds of doubt about my character in the minds of dozens of people, and those seeds were growing into a poisonous garden of assumptions and judgments. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Don't read the comments. I'm handling this." Too late, I thought, but I appreciated her fierce protectiveness. Mom had always been Elena's biggest defender, making excuses for her selfish behavior and smoothing over the damage she left in her wake. But yesterday had clearly been the final straw. For the first time in our adult lives, Mom was choosing my side over Elena's. Marcus returned from his phone calls with the contact information for a family lawyer who specialized in harassment cases. Attorney Catherine Mills could see us that afternoon if we were willing to pay for an emergency consultation. We were. "There's something else," Marcus said, sitting beside me on our bed. "I called Dr. Peterson's office to give them a heads up about what Elena posted. I didn't want them to be blindsided if someone calls them asking questions about your mental fitness." Dr. Peterson was my obstetrician, a kind woman in her 50s who'd been monitoring my pregnancy since the beginning. The thought of Elena's lies reaching my doctor's office made me feel sick all over again. What did they say? That they'd make a note in your file about the family situation, and that anyone who calls asking for information about you will be told that patient confidentiality prevents them from discussing your case. But Carolina, if Elena really does call social services, they might contact Dr. Peterson directly. The implications hit me like a freight train. If Elena filed a false report with Child Protective Services, I could be investigated. There could be social workers asking questions, demanding interviews, scrutinizing every aspect of my life and relationship. Even if the investigation ultimately cleared me, the stress could affect my pregnancy, and the stigma could follow us for years. "She wouldn't actually call CPS," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. "She's angry and lashing out, but she wouldn't really try to have my baby taken away." Marcus pulled up Elena's Facebook post again, pointing to the final paragraph. "Read this part again. She's not making idle threats, Carolina. She's building a public record of her concerns so that when she does file a report, she can point to this post as evidence that she tried to handle the situation privately first." The calculated cruelty of it took my breath away. Elena hadn't just humiliated me at my baby shower and then posted about it online. She was constructing a narrative that would justify whatever her next move might be. This wasn't spontaneous meanness. It was a carefully orchestrated campaign to undermine my credibility as an expectant mother. Our appointment with Catherine Mills was scheduled for 3 o'clock. Marcus and I spent the drive to her office in tense silence, both of us lost in our own thoughts about how quickly our lives had been turned upside down. Just 24 hours ago, our biggest concern had been whether the nursery would be finished before the baby arrived. Now we were consulting lawyers about family members who might be trying to interfere with our custody rights. Catherine's office was in a sleek downtown building, all glass and steel that made me feel small and overwhelmed. The lawyer herself was the opposite of intimidating, though. She was probably in her early 40s, with short auburn hair and a warm smile that made me feel like we were sitting in her living room instead of a conference room. "Tell me everything," she said, settling back in her chair with a legal pad. "Start from the beginning, and don't leave out any details, no matter how insignificant they might seem." I told her about Elena's insistence on planning the shower, about her behavior during the gift opening, about the cruel things she'd said in front of my family and friends. Marcus filled in details about Elena's recent breakup and her apparent jealousy over our pregnancy. Then I showed Catherine the Facebook post and read some of the most concerning comments aloud. Catherine took notes throughout our story, occasionally asking clarifying questions or requesting specific dates and times. When we finished, she set down her pen and looked directly at me. "Mrs. Reeves, I want to be very clear about something. What your sister did at your baby shower was cruel and inappropriate, but it's not illegal. What she posted on Facebook is potentially actionable, depending on how far she takes this and whether she follows through on her threats. So we can't do anything right now? Marcus asked. I didn't say that. There are several steps we can take to protect your family and document what's happening. First, I want you to screenshot everything, the original post, every comment, every share. Save it all in multiple places. If Elena deletes the post later, we'll still have evidence of what she said and how people responded. Catherine handed me a folder with official-looking documents inside. Second, I'm going to help you file a harassment complaint with the police. This creates a paper trail in case Elena escalates her behavior. It probably won't result in any immediate action, but if she continues targeting your family, the police will have a record of the pattern. What about the threats to call social services? I asked. That's where things get more complicated. If Elena does file a report, CPS is legally obligated to investigate. The good news is that false reports are taken seriously, and if an investigation finds that the allegations were malicious and unfounded, Elena could face legal consequences. The bad news is that you'll have to go through the investigation process first. Catherine leaned forward, her expression serious. Mrs. Reeves, I need you to understand that even a baseless CPS investigation can be incredibly stressful, especially for someone in your condition. We need to be proactive about protecting you and your baby. She outlined a strategy that felt both reassuring and terrifying. We would gather character references from friends, family members, and colleagues. We would document my prenatal care, our financial stability, and our preparations for the baby's arrival. We would compile evidence of Elena's pattern of manipulative behavior, going back years if necessary. Essentially, we would build a case defending my fitness as a mother before anyone officially questioned it. There's one more thing, Catherine said as we prepared to leave. Elena's Facebook post mentioned specific concerns about your mental health and stability. I strongly recommend that you schedule an appointment with a therapist or counselor, someone who can evaluate your mental state and provide professional documentation that you're psychologically prepared for motherhood. The suggestion stung, even though I knew it was practical advice. The fact that I needed professional validation of my sanity because of my sister's lies felt like another violation, another way Elena had invaded and contaminated my pregnancy experience. We left Catherine's office with a plan, but I felt more anxious than when we'd arrived. The lawyer's advice made Elena's threat feel more real, more imminent. I was no longer dealing with a jealous sister's tantrum. I was potentially facing a legal battle for my unborn child. That evening, while Marcus worked on screenshotting and documenting Elena's Facebook activity, I called Dr. Peterson's office. I wanted to schedule an extra appointment to discuss how stress might be affecting my pregnancy, and I wanted to make sure my medical records clearly documented my mental and physical health status. The nurse who answered the phone was someone I'd spoken with many times before, a cheerful woman named Linda who always remembered to ask about Marcus and my pregnancy symptoms. This time, though, her voice sounded strained. Mrs. Reeves, I'm so glad you called. Dr. Peterson wanted to speak with you about some phone calls we've received today. My heart sank. Phone calls? 3 different people called asking questions about you and your pregnancy. We didn't give out any information, of course, but Dr. Peterson thought you should know. Elena had already started making calls. Less than 24 hours after posting her concerns on Facebook, she was actively contacting my healthcare providers, trying to gather information or plant seeds of doubt about my competency. Did they identify themselves? I asked. One person claimed to be conducting a background check for a potential employer. Another said they were from an insurance company, verifying information for a claim. The third caller hung up when we asked for their name and callback number. All lies, obviously. Elena was fishing for information she could use to support her narrative about my unfitness as a mother. The fact that she was already being deceptive with medical professionals made me realize how far she was willing to go with this campaign against me. Dr. Peterson called me back within an hour. Carolina, I want to reassure you that your medical information is completely confidential, and we haven't shared anything with anyone. But these calls suggest that someone is actively investigating you, and I'm concerned about the stress this might be causing. I explained the situation with Elena, the baby shower incident, and the Facebook post. Dr. Peterson listened without interrupting, occasionally making sympathetic sounds. I've seen family dynamics like this before, she said when I finished. Unfortunately, pregnancy and new babies can bring out the worst in people who feel left out or jealous. The important thing right now is protecting your health and your baby's development. She wanted to see me later that week for an additional checkup, both to monitor how stress might be affecting my blood pressure and to document in my medical records that I was receiving appropriate prenatal care and responding normally to pregnancy. She also recommended a therapist who specialized in perinatal mental health, someone who could provide professional documentation of my psychological readiness for motherhood if it became necessary.
Dr. Peterson, I said before hanging up, if someone from social services calls you, what will you tell them? The truth, that you're a responsible patient who attends all her appointments, follows medical advice, and shows no signs of anything that would interfere with your ability to parent safely. Your pregnancy has been textbook normal, and you've demonstrated nothing but appropriate concern for your baby's well-being. Her words were reassuring, but they also highlighted how surreal my situation had become. I was 34 weeks pregnant, preparing for the arrival of my first child, and instead of focusing on cribs and car seats, I was building a legal defense against my own sister. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was lying in bed, feeling the baby kick and move, when I realized that I was approaching this all wrong. I'd been reacting to Elena's attacks, letting her control the narrative and put me on the defensive. But Elena had made one crucial mistake. She'd launched her campaign against me in a public forum, in front of witnesses who knew the truth. I got up and opened my laptop, navigating to Facebook for the first time since reading Elena's post that morning. The comments had multiplied throughout the day, creating a sprawling thread of speculation and judgment about my character. But I also noticed something Elena probably hadn't expected. Several people were starting to push back against her narrative. My college roommate Sarah had posted a detailed response describing the Elena she'd witnessed at the baby shower, contrasting it with the concerned sister persona Elena was projecting online. Marcus's sister had shared specific examples of my reliability and maturity, including how I'd helped coordinate care for her family during medical emergencies. Even some of Elena's own friends were beginning to question whether her account of events was accurate. But the most powerful response came from my mother. Mom had posted a comment that was longer than most magazine articles, methodically refuting every claim Elena had made about me. She detailed my academic achievements, my professional success, my stable marriage, and my years of volunteer work with children and elderly adults. She described Elena's recent breakup and suggested that grief and jealousy were clouding her judgment. Most importantly, Mom had shared pictures of me with her grandchildren from Marcus's family, showing me feeding bottles and changing diapers and reading bedtime stories. Photos from charity events where I'd volunteered with pediatric patients. Images of the nursery Marcus and I had carefully prepared, showing the love and attention we'd put into creating a safe, beautiful space for our daughter. The visual evidence was devastating to Elena's claims. It was impossible to look at those photos and believe that I was unprepared or unfit for motherhood. Mom had essentially crowdsourced a character witness testimony, providing concrete proof that Elena's concerns were unfounded. Reading Mom's response gave me the courage to write my own. I'd been silent since Elena's attack began, partly from shock and partly from a misguided belief that responding would somehow validate her behavior by engaging with it. But silence was being interpreted as guilt or inability to defend myself. It was time to tell my own story. I wrote carefully, thoughtfully, resisting the urge to attack Elena personally or reveal private details about her breakup and jealousy. Instead, I focused on facts. I described the baby shower from my perspective, detailing how Elena had insisted on planning it, how she'd positioned herself as the guest of honor, and how she'd used the gift opening as an opportunity to publicly critique my character. I thanked the friends and family members who had witnessed Elena's behavior and spoke up in my defense. I shared information about my prenatal care, my pregnancy health, and the preparations Marcus and I had made for our daughter's arrival. I posted photos of the nursery, of baby clothes we'd already washed and organized, of books about parenting that I'd been reading. Most importantly, I addressed Elena's threats directly. I wrote that while I was hurt by her cruelty, I was more concerned about the fact that she was apparently planning to file false reports with authorities in an attempt to interfere with my family.
I mentioned that we'd consulted with attorneys about Elena's harassment and that we were prepared to take legal action if her behavior continued. I ended the post with a simple statement. I love my sister, but I will not allow her personal struggles to be used as weapons against my unborn child. My daughter deserves to come into this world surrounded by love and support, not targeted by false accusations and manufactured drama. I published the response at 11 o'clock that night and then closed my laptop, determined not to check for reactions until morning. But sleep was impossible. I lay awake, feeling the baby move, wondering if she could somehow sense the tension and conflict swirling around her before she was even born. When I finally checked Facebook the next morning, the response to my post had been overwhelming. Hundreds of comments from friends, acquaintances, and even strangers offering support and sharing their own stories about toxic family members who had tried to interfere with their pregnancies or parenting. The momentum had shifted completely. Instead of defending myself against Elena's accusations, I was being praised for speaking truth and standing up to family bullying. But Elena's reaction was swift and vicious. She had posted a new status update claiming that my response proved her point about my instability and poor judgment. She suggested that my willingness to air family conflicts demonstrated exactly the kind of impulsive, attention-seeking behavior that made me unfit for motherhood. She also revealed something that made my blood run cold. She had already contacted Child Protective Services and filed a formal complaint about my fitness as a mother. According to her post, a social worker would be contacting me within the week to begin an investigation. Elena had declared war on my family, and the battle was just beginning. Marcus found me crying over my laptop again, but this time my tears were as much from anger as from hurt. Elena had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. She wasn't just attacking my character anymore, she was actively trying to separate me from my child before she was even born. Marcus found me crying over my laptop again, but this time my tears were as much from anger as from hurt. Elena had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. She wasn't just attacking my character anymore, she was actively trying to separate me from my child before she was even born. Catherine was right, Marcus said grimly, reading Elena's latest post. She was building a paper trail to justify filing the report. Now she can tell CPS that she tried to address her concerns privately and through family channels, but we were unresponsive to her legitimate worries about the baby's welfare. I called Catherine Mills immediately, even though it was barely 7 in the morning. Her assistant put me through to her personal cell phone after I explained the urgency of the situation. Elena filed the report, I told her without preamble. CPS is going to contact us this week. Catherine was quiet for a moment, and I could hear her typing in the background. Okay, this is what we prepared for. Are you ready to implement everything we discussed? The next few hours were a whirlwind of phone calls, document gathering, and preparation. Catherine arranged for an emergency character witness affidavit from Dr. Peterson. Marcus contacted his employer to get documentation of our financial stability and his paternity leave benefits. I called the therapist Dr. Peterson had recommended and begged for an emergency appointment to establish professional documentation of my mental health status. By noon, we had assembled a comprehensive portfolio defending my fitness as a mother. Medical records showing excellent prenatal care, financial documents proving our stability, character references from employers, friends, and community members, photos of our prepared nursery and baby supplies, documentation of prenatal classes we'd attended and books we'd studied. Most importantly, we had Elena's own words, her Facebook posts, her comments, and her documented pattern of harassment. Catherine had already spoken with several guests from the baby shower who were willing to provide sworn statements about Elena's behavior and the cruel things she'd said. The good news, Catherine told us during an afternoon conference call, is that Elena has made our job easier. Her social media activity and public statements provide clear evidence that her report to CPS is motivated by jealousy and vindictiveness rather than genuine concern for child welfare. False reporting is a serious offense, and Elena has created a digital paper trail that proves her malicious intent. But I barely heard Catherine's reassurances. All I could think about was the fact that within days, a stranger would be knocking on my door to investigate whether I was fit to parent my own child.
Someone would be scrutinizing my home, my relationship, my mental health, and my preparedness based on lies my sister had told. The baby kicked hard against my ribs, as if sensing my distress. I placed my hand on my belly and whispered an apology to my daughter for the chaos she was being born into. She deserved better than this. She deserved a family that celebrated her arrival instead of fighting over her custody before she'd even taken her first breath. That afternoon, I made another decision that would define the rest of this ordeal. I was done being reactive, done letting Elena control the narrative and timing of events.
If she wanted to wage a public campaign against my character, then I would show the world exactly who she really was. I opened my laptop and began typing the most difficult post I'd ever written. It was time to tell the complete truth about Elena Patterson and the systematic ways she'd tried to destroy my family. I had documentation, witnesses, and evidence. Most importantly, I had the truth on my side. Elena had started this war, but I was going to finish it. The social worker who knocked on our door 3 days later was nothing like what I'd expected. Instead of the stern, judgmental woman I'd imagined, Linda Martinez was probably in her early 30s, with kind eyes and a gentle manner that immediately put me at ease. She apologized for the circumstances that brought her to our home and explained that she was required to investigate all reports concerning child welfare, regardless of their apparent validity. "I've reviewed the complaint and the supporting documentation," she said, settling into our living room chair. "I want you to know that I've also seen the social media activity surrounding this case. It's unusual for family disputes to be so publicly documented, but in some ways, it makes my job easier." Marcus and I exchanged glances. We'd spent the last 3 days in a state of constant anxiety, scrubbing our house until it gleamed and organizing every document we might need to prove our fitness as parents. But Linda's calm demeanor suggested that this investigation might not be the ordeal we'd feared. "The person who filed the report provided very specific allegations," Linda continued, consulting her notes. "She claims that you're mentally unstable, financially irresponsible, and emotionally unprepared for parenthood. She also suggested that your family members have expressed similar concerns about your ability to safely care for a newborn." Hearing Elena's lies repeated by a social worker made them sound both more official and more ridiculous. Linda's matter-of-fact delivery highlighted just how absurd the accusations were when stripped of Elena's emotional manipulation. "However," Linda continued, "I've also spoken with several people who were present at the incident that apparently triggered this report. Their accounts paint a very different picture of what occurred and why this complaint was filed." She had interviewed 3 of the baby shower guests independently, and their stories had been remarkably consistent. Each woman had described Elena's bizarre behavior, her cruel comments about my fitness as a mother, and her apparent jealousy over my pregnancy. They had also provided context about Elena's recent breakup and her obvious emotional instability during the shower. "Mrs. Reeves, based on my preliminary investigation, I believe this report was filed maliciously rather than out of genuine concern for child welfare. However, I'm still required to complete a full assessment to close the case properly." The assessment took 2 hours and was surprisingly thorough. Linda toured our home, paying particular attention to the nursery we'd prepared for the baby. She reviewed our financial records, medical documentation, and the character references we'd compiled. She asked detailed questions about our relationship, our support systems, and our plans for childcare after the baby arrived. Most importantly, she asked me to describe the events at the baby shower from my own perspective. I told her everything, from Elena's insistence on planning the party, to her cruel performance during the gift opening, to her public threats afterward. Linda took detailed notes and occasionally asked follow-up questions, but her expression remained neutral throughout my account. "I have one more question," Linda said as she prepared to leave. "Are you concerned that Elena might continue to interfere with your family after the baby arrives?" The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on defending myself against Elena's current accusations that I hadn't fully considered what her future behavior might look like. "I don't know," I admitted. "She's never done anything like this before, but she's also never been in a situation where she felt this threatened by my happiness." Linda nodded thoughtfully. "I'm going to recommend that this case be closed as unfounded, but I'm also going to document my concerns about the complainant's motivations and mental state. If Elena files additional reports in the future, this investigation will serve as important context."
After Linda left, Marcus and I sat in stunned silence. The investigation we dreaded had been almost anticlimactic. Linda had seen through Elena's lies immediately, and instead of scrutinizing our fitness as parents, she'd ended up documenting Elena's harassment of our family. But our relief was short-lived. That evening, Elena posted another Facebook update, this time claiming that the social worker's visit had confirmed her concerns about me. She wrote that CPS had found evidence supporting her allegations and that further action was being considered to protect my unborn child. It was a complete fabrication, but Elena presented it with such confidence that several people who hadn't been following the situation closely began to believe her version of events. Comments poured in expressing concern for my baby's welfare and praising Elena for her courage in reporting a dangerous situation. I screenshotted Elena's latest lies and sent them to Catherine Mills with a simple message. How much trouble is she in for filing false reports and now lying about the investigation results? Catherine's response was swift and satisfying. A lot. I'll have papers filed by tomorrow morning. True to her word, Catherine served Elena with a cease and desist order the next day, demanding that she stop making false statements about me, my pregnancy, and the CPS investigation. The legal document also warned that continued harassment could result in criminal charges and civil liability for defamation. Elena's reaction was explosive. She posted a frantic status update claiming that I was using lawyers to silence her legitimate concerns about child welfare. She portrayed herself as a brave whistleblower being persecuted for trying to protect a vulnerable infant. She even suggested that my willingness to involve attorneys proved that I was hiding something serious about my fitness as a mother. But Elena had overplayed her hand. Her increasingly erratic behavior and wild accusations were beginning to alienate even her most supportive friends. Comments on her posts shifted from sympathy to skepticism. People started asking pointed questions about her motivations and the accuracy of her claims. The turning point came when my mother decided to share something she'd kept private for months. Mom posted a detailed account of Elena's behavior following her breakup with Derek, including specific incidents that demonstrated Elena's jealousy and increasingly unstable emotional state. Mom revealed that Elena had been obsessing over my pregnancy since the day we announced it. She had insisted on being involved in every aspect of our preparation, from choosing baby clothes to researching pediatricians. When we gently suggested that she was being overly involved, Elena had exploded, accusing us of shutting her out of important family decisions. Most damaging, Mom shared screenshots of text messages Elena had sent her in the weeks before the baby shower. In them, Elena had explicitly stated her belief that I was unfit for motherhood and her intention to do something to prevent me from ruining an innocent child's life. The messages provided clear evidence that Elena's attack on me had been premeditated, not a spontaneous reaction to genuine concerns. They showed a pattern of escalating obsession and vindictive planning that contradicted her public claims about acting out of love and worry. Elena's support network crumbled overnight. Friends who had initially defended her began distancing themselves from her posts. Her employer, a prestigious marketing firm, quietly removed her from high-profile client accounts after the firm's social media monitoring flagged her involvement in a public harassment campaign. But Elena wasn't finished. Cornered and desperate, she made one final devastating mistake. She created a fake social media account under an assumed name and began spreading even more vicious lies about me across multiple platforms. She posted fabricated stories about my alleged drug use, claimed that Marcus was abusive, and even suggested that my pregnancy was the result of an affair. Elena had apparently forgotten that digital forensics make it nearly impossible to maintain true anonymity online. Catherine's investigator traced the fake accounts back to Elena's IP address within 48 hours, providing irrefutable evidence of her ongoing harassment campaign. This evidence was exactly what we needed to shift from defense to offense. Catherine filed criminal charges against Elena for cyberstalking, harassment, and filing false reports. She also initiated a civil lawsuit seeking damages for defamation and emotional distress. The criminal charges were particularly serious. Elena's pattern of behavior, combined with her use of technology to stalk and harass me, elevated her actions from simple family drama to criminal conduct. The prosecutor assigned to the case was experienced in cybercrime and took Elena's behavior very seriously. Elena's arraignment was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late September, just 2 weeks before my due date. I had debated whether to attend, but Catherine convinced me that my presence would send a powerful message to the court about the real-world impact of Elena's actions. Walking into that courtroom at 38 weeks pregnant was one of the most difficult things I'd ever done. Elena sat at the defendant's table looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. She was wearing a plain black dress instead of her usual designer outfits, and her hair hung limp and unwashed around her face. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. This was the sister I'd grown up with, the woman who had taught me to braid my hair and had driven me to my first job interview.
Seeing her reduced to a criminal defendant because of her own choices was heartbreaking, even after everything she'd put me through. The prosecutor presented Elena's case efficiently and thoroughly. She outlined the timeline of harassment, from the baby shower incident through the false CPS report to the fake social media accounts. She displayed screenshots of Elena's posts and messages, documenting the escalating pattern of lies and threats. Most compelling was the testimony from Linda Martinez, the social worker who had investigated Elena's complaints. Linda testified that in her 15 years of child protective work, she had never seen a more obviously malicious and unfounded report. She stated that Elena's behavior had wasted valuable resources that could have been used to protect children who were actually in danger. Elena's lawyer tried to portray her actions as the misguided concerns of a loving sister, but the evidence was overwhelming. The judge listened patiently to the defense arguments, but seemed unimpressed by attempts to excuse Elena's behavior as family conflict. When it came time for sentencing, the judge addressed Elena directly. "Miss Patterson, the court has reviewed your case thoroughly, and I must say that your behavior represents a troubling abuse of systems designed to protect vulnerable children. You filed false reports with social services, wasting resources, and potentially preventing real victims from receiving help. You conducted a sustained campaign of harassment against your sister during one of the most vulnerable times in her life. Most concerning, you used technology to spread lies and defamatory statements that could have permanently damaged your sister's reputation and relationships." The judge paused, looking directly at Elena. "However, I also recognize that your actions appear to stem from personal emotional struggles rather than malicious criminal intent. Therefore, I am sentencing you to 2 years of supervised probation, 200 hours of community service with organizations that support pregnant women and new mothers, and mandatory counseling to address the underlying issues that led to this behavior." Elena broke down sobbing at the defense table. The weight of her actions and their consequences seemed to finally hit her fully. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw genuine remorse in her tears rather than self-pity. But the judge wasn't finished. "Additionally, I am issuing a restraining order prohibiting you from contacting your sister, her husband, or their child for a period of 3 years. You are also prohibited from posting about them on social media or discussing their family publicly in any forum." The restraining order was exactly what we'd hoped for. It would give us the protection and peace we needed to welcome our daughter without fear of Elena's interference. As we left the courthouse, Elena's lawyer approached Catherine to discuss the civil case. Elena was in no position to fight a defamation lawsuit, and her attorney was eager to negotiate a settlement that would resolve all remaining legal issues. The settlement we eventually reached was straightforward. Elena would pay our legal fees, make a substantial donation to a children's charity in our daughter's name, and issue a public apology acknowledging that her accusations against me had been false and motivated by personal jealousy rather than legitimate concerns. Most importantly, Elena agreed to attend intensive therapy to address the emotional issues that had led to her destructive behavior. Part of me hoped that counseling might help her become the person she'd once been, before jealousy and disappointment had twisted her into someone capable of such cruelty. Our daughter, Isabella Vose Reeves, was born on October 15th at 3:47 in the morning. She was perfect, healthy, and absolutely beautiful. Marcus cried when the doctor placed her in my arms, and I felt a surge of love so powerful that it erased every moment of doubt Elena had tried to plant in my mind. The first few weeks of Isabella's life were everything I dreamed they would be. Marcus proved to be a natural father, patient and gentle, and completely devoted to both of us. Our families rallied around us with support and help, bringing meals and offering to babysit so we could rest. Most surprisingly, Linda Martinez stopped by during Isabella's second week of life. She brought a small gift and wanted to see how we were adjusting to parenthood.
She told me that in all her years of social work, she'd never seen parents more prepared and devoted to their child's welfare. I hope you know that Elena's accusations were a reflection of her own problems, not any actual concerns about your parenting, Linda said as she held Isabella. You're exactly the kind of mother every child deserves to have. Her words meant more to me than she could possibly know. After months of having my fitness as a mother questioned and attacked, hearing professional validation from someone who specialized in child welfare was incredibly healing. Elena kept her word about the restraining order and the settlement terms. She posted a public apology on Facebook, acknowledging that her accusations against me had been false and apologizing for the pain she'd caused. She also made the promised donation to a local organization that provided support to teen mothers, contributing $5,000 in Isabella's name. I heard through mutual friends that Elena had indeed started therapy and was making progress in addressing the emotional issues that had led to her breakdown. She had also left her job at the marketing firm and moved to a different city, apparently seeking a fresh start away from the wreckage of her old life. Part of me wondered if Elena would ever be able to have a relationship with Isabella. The restraining order would expire when my daughter turned 3, but the damage Elena had done to our family would take much longer to heal, if it ever could be repaired. For now, though, I was focused on the future rather than the past. Isabella was growing and thriving, hitting every milestone and filling our home with joy and laughter. Marcus and I had weathered the worst crisis of our marriage and emerged stronger and more united than ever. Sometimes, when I was feeding Isabella in the quiet hours of the night, I thought about the woman Elena used to be before jealousy consumed her. I mourned a loss of that sister, the one who had been my closest friend for so many years. But I also felt grateful for the strength I'd discovered in myself during those dark months. Elena had tried to destroy my confidence as a mother before my daughter was even born. Instead, she'd forced me to examine my own readiness for parenthood and gather evidence of my strength, preparation, and support systems. In trying to prove that I was unfit to be Isabella's mother, Elena had actually documented all the reasons why I was perfect for the job. On Isabella's first birthday, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single photograph of a teddy bear and a handwritten note that simply said, "Happy birthday, Isabella. I'm sorry for everything. Love, Aunt Elena." I stared at the note for a long time, feeling a complex mixture of sadness, anger, and something that might have been forgiveness beginning to grow. Elena was still my sister, despite everything that had happened between us. Maybe someday, when Isabella was older and the wounds had healed more completely, there might be a path back to some kind of relationship. But for now, I tucked the note away in Isabella's baby book, next to photos from her birthday party and cards from all the people who truly loved and supported our family. Elena's cruelty had taught me to value those relationships more deeply and never take them for granted. As I write this, Isabella is now 2.5 years old, walking and talking and filling every day with wonder and joy. She has never known a world where her fitness to be loved was questioned or where her mother's worthiness was under attack. She knows only security, devotion, and the kind of unconditional love that every child deserves. The restraining order will expire in 6 months, but I'm not sure Elena will attempt to contact us when it does. I've heard that she's doing well in her new city, that she's found a different career path, and is in a healthy relationship with someone who appreciates her better qualities. I hope that's true. I hope Elena has found peace and happiness, and I hope she's learned to channel her intelligence and passion in positive directions rather than destructive ones. But mostly, I hope she's learned that love isn't a competition, and that someone else's joy doesn't diminish your own. Looking back on those terrible months before Isabella's birth, I'm amazed by how much pain one person can inflict when they're hurting, and how much strength can be found when you're fighting for someone you love. Elena tried to take away my confidence, my family, and my child. Instead, she gave me absolute certainty about who I am and what I'm capable of. Sometimes, the people who try to destroy us end up making us stronger than we ever imagined we could be. Elena wanted to prove I wasn't worthy of being Isabella's mother. Instead, she proved that there's nothing I wouldn't do to protect my daughter, even from the people who share my blood. That's a lesson Isabella will carry with her as she grows up, a foundation of security built on the knowledge that her mother will always choose her well-being over family politics, her safety over social harmony, and her future over preserving relationships with people who wish her harm. Elena may have been right about one thing. My daughter did deserve a better mother. She deserved a mother who would fight for her, document threats against her, and build legal barriers to protect her from anyone who might try to hurt her. She deserved a mother who would choose love over loyalty and truth over keeping peace. That's exactly the mother she got. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.